Well, good morning again. I want to use our time very wisely and turn to three scriptures, very short scriptures this morning, as we continue to focus our attention on the cross. The center of this faith we call Christianity, the heartbeat of our religion. What does it mean to have the cross at the center of it all? So I want to lift three scriptures to us this morning. John 3:17, Matthew 5:17, and 2 Corinthians 3:6. And I'll write them for us, of course, to give us a visual. In fact, I'll move myself over here. So, John, 3rd chapter, 17th verse. Matthew, 5th chapter, 17th verse. And then 2 Corinthians, 3rd chapter, 6th verse. And I'll read them in that order. Now listen for the word of the Lord. Indeed, God did not send the Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Matthew 5:17 now. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, Jesus speaking here. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. And lastly, 2 Corinthians 3:6. God has made us competent to be ministers of a new covenant, not of letter, but of spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Okay, I want to begin this morning by asking you a question. When you think of Jesus' life, what comes to mind? How do you perceive the life of Jesus? So we're doing a little Lent this morning. We're self-reflecting, right? When you think about the life of Jesus, what are some of the first images or some of the first thoughts that come to mind? Teaching, okay. Calmness. Preaching, okay. Healing, okay. Storytelling, yeah, I like that. Storytelling.
A little rabble rousing.
Okay. Children, a little rebel rousing. Okay, okay.
Shepherd and caretaker.
Shepherd, caretaker. Are there any others?
Inward struggle.
Inward struggle.
Sacrificial lamb.
Sacrificial lamb.
He was a king and a commoner.
King and a commoner. Wow. Now, all of those will preach, right? You want to add one more? Okay. All of those will preach. All of those are exactly right. And I particularly this morning enjoyed Shirley's remarks that a little bit of a rebel rouser. Because when I think of Jesus' life, of course, all of those certainly come to mind, but I also think about rules, the rules. Jesus spent a great deal of time addressing the rules. And in fact, this morning as we continue our series on the cross, when I look upon the cross, I see someone persecuted and indeed executed for not following the rules. He didn't follow the rules. So when I think about Jesus, I want to offer this morning, as we think about the cross, maybe a different analogy than you've heard before. Jesus, the rule breaker. Sometimes it was religious rules. He got into trouble all the time with the Pharisees, which actually led to his death, right? He broke Levitical law because he healed on the Sabbath, or he didn't condemn the woman with the issue of blood. Levitical law said if you were on your menstrual cycle, you were supposed to be put out, you were unclean. Here she was in public and had the nerve to touch a man. Jesus did not condemn her. He was breaking the rules by not doing so. He was healing on the Sabbath. He was working on the Sabbath day. He was breaking the rules. He challenged their rule keeping, when was asked about which of the laws were greatest, which of one of God's commands was greatest, and in his own claims about who God was and who he was in God. He broke religious rules. He also broke societal rules. He included women, criminals, the Samaritans. Samaritans were those, if you go way back to the Exodus story, the Samaritans, they trace their lineage to those that were half Jewish and half foreigner. And so there was an ethnic difference. And so the Jews and the Samaritans did not get along. And so if you remember the story of the woman at the well, when he says, "Why do you speak?" She said, "Why do you speak to me?" He asked her for a drink of water. And she said, "Why do you speak to me? I'm a woman and I'm a Samaritan." We all know Jews and Samaritans don't get along. So he broke societal rules when he included women openly, gave them leadership position. He included Samaritans, those of different ethnic backgrounds. That was risky when it came to societal rules. And the marginalized. He included persons like prostitutes and tax collectors who were hated because they worked for the Romans. Remember, they were a colonized group of minority people, and they were living in the Roman Empire. And the Romans had harsh tax collecting methods, and those that were tax collectors were seen for working for the man or the enemy. How dare you? How dare one of us work for them to carry out their bidding? So he broke societal rules by really including everyone. He broke cultural rules. We've said in this class before, he was a middle-aged, at 30, you would have been middle-aged, if not a little older than middle-aged at that time period. He was a middle-aged man who was not married and did not have children. That was a kind of a cultural controversy, right? Why he's so different. He was a rule breaker. Jesus was constantly being confronted with those who kept reminding him, "Dude, we don't do things like that around here. Don't you know better? Why can't you just follow the rules?" These are 10 rules that men wished women knew. Are you ready? Okay, ladies, if the men in the world collectively, there are always exceptions, but if men collectively could offer you 10 rules that they really wished you knew, these might be 10 of them. If you think you're fat, you probably are. Don't ask us. Learn to work the toilet seat. It's up, and then it goes down. It's really easy. Anything you wear is fine, really. It really is. Number 4, yes and no are perfectly acceptable answers. Number 5, a headache that lasts for a whole month is a problem. See a doctor. Number 6, let us ogle. If we don't look at other women, how can we know how pretty you are? Number 7, anything we said 6 or 8 months ago is inadmissible in an argument. All comments become null and void after 7 days. Number 8, Sunday equals sports. It's like the full moon or the changing of the tides. Just let it be. Number 9, if you don't want to dress like a Victoria's Secret model, don't expect us to act like a soap opera guy. And number 10, whenever possible, please say whatever you have to say during commercials, please. And the bonus rule, don't rub the lamp if you don't want the genie to come out. Rules, rules, rules. Rules, rules, rules. The rain has me a little ornery this morning. I'm sorry. Rules, rules, rules. Here is one of the great paradoxes of Jesus. While Jesus is thought to have been perfect and even divine, he wasn't a rule follower, and in fact spent a great deal of time breaking them. So, to be effective, to be spirit-led, to live in the love and the power and the life of God may include breaking a few rules. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
Well, I think we have the right to question something that we don't particularly agree with, whether it's our particular, method, Methodist or Catholics or whatever. I mean, I think we have the right to question that. And that doesn't mean that we don't believe or that we're going against the church. But we have the right to challenge. We have the right to question.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say this is a women's role. Cats and women will do what they want. Men should just accept it.
Cats and women, right? I saw a joke, was it yesterday or day before, that said, cats can feel vibrations. They're even thought to be able to predict or know when an earthquake is coming. But do they warn us? No. Because they're cats. In their own way. I always say about cats, when I come home, I can be gone for 5 minutes and my dog is hysterically glad to see me. A cat will come, you'll be gone for a week, the cat will come home, you were gone? Didn't notice. Yeah.
Depends on the cat.
Depends on the cat, that's true. That's true. There's a neighborhood cat that they let wander in my neighborhood, almost like a dog. Like they just let her wander, and she's just very friendly, and she'll come in if you let her. She's just a very friendly cat. So there are some exceptions. Jesus as a rule breaker. What do you think about that? What do you think about? We are told from the time that we are children, right? We must follow the rules, right? And here we have, at the epicenter, at the very central heartbeat of our faith, someone who is executed for not following the rules. Someone who is considered to be divine. So, to be perfect doesn't necessarily mean to follow all the rules. What does that mean for you? What do you think about that?
It takes courage to speak up and do what he did. And it got attention.
Yeah, not always, not
Not the kind
that we want often, right? Sometimes we think to be a hero or heroic or heroine means that we will be celebrated and lauded for our courage. Maybe years later, but not always in the moment. So when we think about being someone who is brave, someone who is courageous, morally courageous, someone who takes a stand.
Civil disobedience.
Someone who pushes back like a Gandhi or a King or the women around the suffrage movement, right? Who said no, like Susan B. Anthony was arrested for voting in the late 1800s because women could not vote. But she broke the rule, right? You think about someone like Rosa Parks, who most people think just was a tired old lady. In fact, she was not an old lady. She was in her 40s at the time. She had spent 10 years involved in activism. She was a member of the local NAACP. She knew very well what she was doing. And there's a great quote, there's a great library in downtown Montgomery named for her. And there's a great quote on T-shirts and mugs in which she says, "The only tired I was tired of giving in."
Wow.
Right? The only tired I was tired of giving in. I was not particularly tired. Therefore, I just was so exhausted I couldn't give up my seat. It was a stand. She was arrested. And it wasn't until much later she was lauded. And she actually lived to see it, but it wasn't until years later she was thought to be the mother of something, right? But to be a warrior, if I can use that analogy, a warrior for God, does not necessarily mean you follow the rules, which is kind of contradictory to how we've been taught and raised to be good people, right? Be a good boy, be a good girl, just follow the rules, right?
I think it depends on applying or breaking the rule. If you're breaking the rule for your own benefit, then that's not a good thing. But if you're breaking the rule to help mankind or to change something that's unfair or unjust, then we're going to look at it later as a good thing.
Yes.
And isn't the cause and the end result more important than the rule being broken?
Possibly. What do you think? Yes.
I think what comes to mind for me is who wrote the rules and who sets the
That's gotten a whole lot of people in trouble, particularly women over the years. Who wrote that rule?
Yeah, who said that?
Who said that? Who says so? Right? Who says so?
Everybody else thinks so.
But
Yeah.
But Jesus said that he came to fulfill the law, not to break the rules, but to fulfill it. I mean, he reduced everything down to love God, love neighbor.
Let's talk.
Because all the rules revolve around those two things.
Again, Shirley is just a great transition. Let's talk about that.
She read your.
Right, okay. She snuck in and read my iPad overnight, right?
Y'all did. I think y'all been talking.
Yeah, and we even got gray on together. How about that? The text from 2 Corinthians that we read tells us that the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. What we struggle with was who wrote the rule, why was it written, what was the purpose of it being written, and do we follow the letter of the law, or do we follow the spirit of this law? I believe we must choose love over law every time. And for me, this is a great compass for living. We must choose that which gives life rather than that which takes it. So, as we're talking about a great compass for living, let me write a few things here. Okay? So, when we think about, is that going to write for me? No.
The black one writes really well.
Okay, let's try this. All right. So, when we think about the letter or the law, the rules, and then we want to think about what is the spirit of it. So, the letter of the law, as we have said, is that which kills or drains life. The spirit gives life or is life-giving. So when we're thinking about using this as a compass for living, think about those things in our world. We're constantly, every day, forced with issues of ethics and morality, and how do we behave, how do we act, how do we treat others, what decisions do we make, whether there is a particular rule for it or not. Just how do we govern ourselves in our daily lives? And so when we think about the letter of the law, or the rules, often if it kills or drains life, we want to reject it. But if it gives life or it is life-giving, then we want to embrace it. The letter of the law is rooted in fear. The spirit is rooted in love, and it looks for ways to love. So again, as we govern our lives, we should look for ways to love. And so when we think about any issue in the world, in our lives, at work, in our society, in which ways are they rooted in fear? That's something that I use personally. If I'm making a decision solely rooted in fear, it makes me take pause and think, okay, is this really the best decision? Is this the best reaction? Because I'm fearful? Or is it because it's rooted in love and gratitude in some way? The letter of the law offers despair. The Spirit offers hope. When you encounter the Spirit, you leave hopeful. So think about those things in life which offers you doom and gloom and despair. And think about those things in life that offers you hope. Now, specifically speaking, Jesus is confronting what we would call the Old Covenant. The word testament means covenant. When we look at the Old Testament, what we're actually saying is we are reading or investigating an old or older covenant. Now, of course, the Jews don't call it the Old Testament. For them, there ain't nothing old about it. Right? So they call it the Hebrew Bible. However, when we say as the Christian community, the Old Testament, we're talking about a covenant God had with God's people that we don't necessarily live the letter of anymore. Right? And so there were purposes behind all of those, particularly in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, right? There's all kinds of crazy, wild things that we should and shouldn't do. I think I read a verse out of, was it Numbers, I think, in this class a couple of weeks ago. It says if your son disobeys you, take him to the public square and stone him, right? But we're not exactly embracing that today. Nobody's children would make it, not mine included, right? Most of us wouldn't have made it, if disobedience called for stoning. So there's all kinds of, but if you read through there are reasons for and against, a lot of it rooted in fear, right? And so Jesus is saying, that was good for its time. I mean, okay, I'm not trying to, if I was going to use vernacular, I'm not trying to, throw the letter of the law on the bus. I'm not trying to diss it. I'm here to fulfill it. Let's think of it that way. I'm not here to drain life. I'm here to give it. I'm not here to invoke fear and anxiety. I'm here to root you in love. I'm not here to offer despair. I'm here to offer hope. I'm not here to bring about a sin consciousness, but I'm here to bring about a grace consciousness. What does the letter of the law do? It makes us aware of sin. Don't do, don't do, don't do, don't do. Don't. What does the Spirit do? The Spirit makes us aware of grace. Right? Makes us aware of grace. Where is grace? Where are we looking for grace abounding? And so instead of being critical, the Spirit offers encouragement. Are you beginning to see the contrast? Beginning to feel the contrast? Instead of being critical, it looks for encouragement. For example, I was talking to my mother yesterday, and she was saying that when my grandmother was ill, or in fact after she died, another part of the family, her cousins, they didn't come by here and bring us any food. I just can't believe it. And she was just going on and on about what they had not done. And then towards the end of the conversation, she said, well, they did buy all of the disposable plates and dishes and forks. But anyway, what they didn't do, right? The letter of the law looks at, it's sin conscious, it's critical. The Spirit looks for that which is graceful and gracious. Looks for ways to be gracious. It looks for ways to encourage. And lastly, the letter of the law spews judgment. But the Spirit offers redemption. It offers redemption. It doesn't point out ways in which I'm on the wrong path. The Spirit helps me see how to begin the right path. I've always said, particularly about preaching and preachers, if I used to go to a church years ago, it was a non-denominational church, and the pastor would spend about 25 minutes detailing what was wrong in the world, and very little, if any, time talking about the solution to whatever the problem of the day was. And you just never felt encouraged.
Was he a politician?
He was not, although he probably could have been. He was a very political kind of guy. So the Spirit does not beat me over the head in which way I am on the wrong path, but instead points out the right path. A drunk that smelled like a brewery got on a bus one day, and he sat down next to a priest. The drunk's shirt was stained, his face was full of bright red lipstick, and he had a half-empty bottle of wine sticking out of his pocket. He opened his newspaper and started reading. A couple minutes later, he asked the priest, "Father, what causes arthritis?" Mister, it's caused by loose living, being with cheap, wicked women, too much alcohol, and contempt for your fellow man, the priest replied. Imagine that, the drunk muttered. He returned to reading his paper. The priest, thinking about what he had said, turned to the man and apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come on so strong. How long have you had arthritis? I don't have arthritis, Father, the drunk said, but I just read in the paper that the Pope does. Be careful about our judgment. Our judgment. There's a great organization called PFLAG, which is the parents and family of lesbian and gay persons. And their slogan is, be careful who you hate. It just might be someone you love. Be careful who you hate. It just might be someone you love. Right? What do you think about this compass? In what ways can this compass for living come in handy? Yes.
The way I think about this is you need to be more inclusive, and you don't need to put filters on your evaluations of people. Because you got to, they're human, and they got dignity, and you got to show respect.
And following the letter of the law, to me, it's just rules for separation. I mean, the rules separate us instead of bringing us together. I mean, that's why the spirit of the law is so much better to follow, because rules are made to separate people, not bring them together. I mean, not that there aren't good rules, because there are, but for the most part, they separate us. You know, like if you don't do that, then you can't do that.
And I'm a believer, and you certainly are free to disagree with me, that every rule is meant to be evaluated and re-evaluated, right? Because there are many, many rules and laws and ways of doing things that were really good and purposeful in its time. But as we re-evaluate them, well, we don't need that anymore, right? If you even look, there's always periodically in the paper on some news program, they'll look at laws that are still in the books. They just haven't really been executed in any particular way, but they're still in the books. You know, it's like, no spitting on the sidewalk, fine $25 or.
You can't park your covered wagon.
You can't park your covered wagon on the blah, 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 right? And then some that make us shriek, like, you can beat your wife, but it has to be a stick of this size and not of a. Yeah. And so you think, wait a minute, every rule needs to be evaluated. The death knell of any church, or organization for that matter, is we've always done it that way.
Yes.
We've always done it that way, which basically says we're not open to progress. We're not open to growth, right? We're not open to growth. We're not open to new things and in ways in which God can be new and bring newness into our lives. We're not open to life and love and hope and grace and encouragement and redemption. We've always done it this way. And to me, it seems like a no-brainer, but I constantly run into folks, especially in churches, who I do understand that familiarity brings comfort, but at some point we have to be people of vision and look beyond me and mine right now, and see a larger picture. When you're running a business, you can't plan for today and tomorrow. You have to plan for next year and in 5 years and a 10-year plan, right? You have to have a vision of what it can be, lest it'll die with you. It'll die with you. And I think the church is particularly guilty of that in a lot of ways. Christianity is on the decline. The mainline denominations, particularly the United Methodist Church is among those, is on the decline. And every year there are always arguments about we've always done it that way, about being comfortable with change. And so what a lot of conferences are doing are letting older churches just die and putting resources and money and energy in starting new churches, right? Because there are some churches that they just do not want to change. since we're talking church for just a second, churches that are in a particular neighborhood, and the demographic of that neighborhood has changed, and they are not willing to reach out to persons who look different or speak a different language than they. Right? We've always done it this way, and if new people come in, they'll have new ideas, and we won't maybe have the bake sale every fifth Sunday anymore. We'll have to change it to something else, right? Churches who want young people, but they want them to just come and sit and be quiet, and they don't want them to really participate and bring in new ideas and new energy and new ways of doing things. Right? Churches who young people say, we like a screen in the sanctuary, right? We don't want a screen. Like, I mean, it is as if you said, let's put up an homage to Hitler or something. It's like, we don't want a screen in our church. That's sacrilegious. Organs were thought to be sacrilegious at one time. You know? We don't want that secular stuff, because organs were part of secular music at one time. We don't want that secular music in our church, right? But think about it in your own family, in your own life. We don't want to change. I don't want to do it differently. I think that's a marker of going down a path that you might not want to go down. An unwillingness to be open, a commitment to the rules without an evaluation of the spirit behind the rules. Anyone else? How could this compass come in handy?
I think the right-hand side there under spirit helps explain the Trinity in a lot of ways. The aspect of the Holy Spirit, if you look at all those characteristics, to me it has kind of a dual purpose beyond just the spirit of the law, the Holy Spirit and what the Holy Spirit brings.
Absolutely. So if we are welcoming the Holy Spirit in our lives, we are likely to see these things. In exclusion of the Spirit in our lives, we are likely to see those things. Just think now, what are things in our lives, our daily lives, that drain life from us? Work. Yeah. Traffic, right? Rain and traffic on the way to Plano. That's what drains life. You know, but think that we have some control over it. You know, when we have a choice. You know, what choices are we making that drain, not even drain life from ourselves, but drain lives from other people around us?
Yeah.
Right? Are there ways in which we behave in the world that drain life from other people? Fear and love, right? What decisions have been made solely in fear with no sense of love and that which is loving? And what ways have we contributed to despair in the world? Maybe not our own despair, but possibly, but despair in the world, despair to other people. This is what Lent does, right? We self-reflect. In what ways are we quick to point out what is wrong in the world, or what we perceive to be wrong in other people, instead of ways that are grace-filled or gracious, those things that offer encouragement, those things that offer redemption. And sometimes it's not even what we say, sometimes it can be how we say it that offers encouragement, right? And there have been times in the last maybe couple of years, I'm learning this lesson, that I will see something that is incorrect or not done correctly, and before I bring it up, I just pause. I think, how is that going to make that person feel? Right? It's not really a big deal that I correct it, so I'll let it slide, right? Because if it's not going to bring them encouragement and make them feel redeemed in some way, let it go. It's not a big deal, right? Like I've been in places and someone say something wrong, get a fact wrong, use the wrong word for something, and that might be a little pet peeve of mine. But in the end of the day, it's just nothing on the line. Like it's not going to cause any issue. It's just a fact of my ego wanting to be right. So I'll let it go. What's the big deal? Okay, they didn't say that word correctly, bringing it up in the middle of the meeting probably is not going to be helpful. Right? I let it go. Right? Right? Why would I have sin consciousness? Why would I want to bring up what's wrong when it doesn't really matter? Now, if it's a huge fact or detail that is going to lead people down the wrong path or have them show up in the wrong place at the wrong time, then yeah, that's the way to do that. But when there's really nothing on the line, why bring it up? You know? Why critique it? I was at in a meeting in another church last week, and a gentleman came up, and the guy made a remark about his sweater, and it was kind of a snide remark, but he had kind of couched it in laughter, and you could tell the gentleman was very uncomfortable. And I thought, oh, there's just no sense in that. Why bring that? No, it wasn't a particularly classy sweater. It was kind of tacky, but why bring it up? Right? What's the like? What is? I'm thinking, what is this person getting out of making that person feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Where can we offer encouragement and love and hope and redemption?
Could have offered to take him shopping.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. We did not really feel bad.
And I was at another venue, and someone came in and said, "Oh, Ray, you're here. Oh, is that your car that parked horribly?" And I thought, it's not a big deal, but it kind of made me feel bad. I guess I didn't park right for them, right? Well, I thought to myself, why did Sammy bring that up? What did he get out of embarrassing me in front of everyone, right? Right? Why are we?
You can reply, did that make you feel better?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think putting other people down in order to feel good about yourself can become an addiction because it doesn't really hit the spot.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep doing it more and more in order to feel better about
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And it's crazy. An endless negative circle.
And I've got a few Facebook friends, which maybe they shouldn't be my Facebook friend, but there's nothing. They have taken it upon themselves to be the critic of the world, and everywhere they go, they find fault. That's what the law does. Ever read that Leviticus and that Deuteronomy stuff and those and Numbers? It's just like all these rules, and I want to say, who made you the rule maker, and who made you the scorekeeper of who's following the rules?
No,
Yeah,
I'm asking.
I do, because sometimes I like to put what I think are inspirational things, and I think, well, this is a way for everyone, my blog and other things, this is a way for people to reach them, But then, I don't quite know how to make it where I don't see their stuff, but they can still see mine. So it's just a technology thing. But sometimes I just shake my head and I go, why, Terrence, why? Why are we, who made you the rule maker and the score keeper?
Yeah.
Right? John tells us that Jesus didn't come into the world to condemn it. So why do we? No need to live a life paralyzed by the law, checking the rule book and marking them off one by one. But in the essence of Christ, the law is fulfilled. God is love. Jesus says, I've come into the world not to condemn it. If we live a life centered in love, there is no need to condemn. There is no need to condemn. So as Paul warns, steer clear of the letter of the law, for it'll kill you. But look for the spirit of love in all things. It'll give you life, and life more abundantly. Amen. Amen. Any additional questions? 11:57. How about that?